Chapter 43-29. Hearing this, Du Fan turned and left. He ordered the servant to bring in some water before leaving. Ling Shuang helped Yi Feifei change her clothes and apply medicine. After rebandaging her wound, she covered her with a quilt and got up to leave. As soon as she left the room, she saw her master coming in, so she went to greet her. "Master. How is Feifei? I heard that she fainted and came back injured." Fengjiu asked as he walked forward. "She should have been hit by a palm. It's considered quite heavy. The rest are all superficial wounds, but there are 2 deep wounds. She lost a lot of blood and fainted. I helped her change her clothes and applied medicine, but she hasn't woken up yet." Ling Shuang paused, then continued. Du Fan went out to deal with it. He said it was done by the He family. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded. "Since that's the case, you stay and take care of her. They'll take care of everything else, so there's nothing to be busy with." "Yes," Ling Shuang replied. Thus, Fengjiu went in to check on Yi Feifei. Seeing that she was fine, he turned and left, heading towards the Wang family's elders' courtyard. In the Wang family's elders' courtyard, Lin Jilin, who was taking care of him, saw Fengjiu enter and bowed, calling out, "Miss Feng." "Miss Lin, how is the old man today?" Fengjiu asked with a smile as he walked in. "Grandfather Wang is in good spirits. He's in his room. If Miss Feng needs him, please come in. I was just about to go home," she said gently, revealing a smile as she turned slightly to invite Fengjiu in. "All right, I'll go in myself. You can go about your business," Fengjiu said with a smile. Seeing this, Lin Jilin responded and left first. "The ghost doctor is here." Old Master Lin walked out and smiled when he saw Fengjiu. "Ghost doctor, how come you have time to come to my place? I heard that now that the antidote has been developed, those infected people in the city are lining up outside the residence." Fengjiu walked in and sat down at the table with him. Then he smiled and said, "Some of the medicine has been boiled, and some are still boiling. Wang Yu is keeping an eye on it. Nothing will happen. That's why I took the time to come and have a chat with you. He, if the ghost doctor could come here often, would be extremely happy." He smiled as he poured her a cup of tea. "We are indebted to you for taking care of us during our stay in the prince's mansion. Everything was prepared without a word. Speaking of which, we still have to thank the old master," Fengjiu said with a smile. Ha, the ghost doctor's thanks is something that we cannot accept. Furthermore, you are my palace's guests. Naturally, we cannot neglect you. If you can stay here for a long time, it would be our palace's honor." The old ancestor of the Wang family stroked his beard and said with a smile. Now that his body had recovered, his face was rosy and he was full of energy. "The matters in the city are more or less settled. So, I'm here to talk to the old master about what to do next." Fengjiu smiled and looked at him, saying, "I still have matters to attend to at home. I've already stayed outside for a long time, and it's time to go back. However, the city is in a mess now. If there is no powerful family to control it, there will be trouble soon." Chapter 43-30. Therefore, Fengjiu told him her plan. Although Azure Demon City was large and there were many aristocratic families, after this incident, it would be in chaos. Maybe some practitioners would take the opportunity to do something. Therefore, she needed the Wang family to become the first aristocratic family in Azure Demon City. In this way, Azure Demon City would be under their jurisdiction, and she would not have to worry about any trouble in the future. The two of them chatted in the room. Outside the mansion, after drinking the medicine, the practitioners in a long line found a place to sit down cross-legged. When they felt the devil chi in their bodies gradually dissipating and their spiritual power gradually recovering, they cheered in surprise. They walked to the gate of the Wang family, bowed respectfully, and left together. They knew that there was a very powerful guest in the Wang family. Moreover, this guest had excellent medical skills. The medicine they drank was the antidote refined by this guest. This time, if it wasn't for this person, they probably wouldn't have survived. However, they did not know who that person was. Some people said that it was a woman in red, with a peerless beauty. Some people said that it was an old man, with white hair and a beard hanging down to his chest, with an air of immortality. Maybe some of them knew what kind of person that person was, but it was not very important to them. What was important was that their virus was cured, and they had a chance to live. Moreover, they also knew that this chance to live came from that mysterious person. A few days later Yi Feifei's injury was almost healed, and everything in the city gradually returned to normal. Feng Zhou, who was in the Wang mansion, also found a chance to say goodbye to the Wang family. Her husband and children were waiting for her at home. Now that the matter was solved, she just wanted to go home and reunite with her family. She just wanted to hug her son and daughter, whom she had not seen for nearly a year. Ghost Doctor is leaving so soon. The Wang family head looked at Feng Zhou and said, "My son has chosen a day to get married. I wanted to invite you to stay for a drink, but I didn't expect you to leave so soon." "Yes. If there is nothing urgent, why don't you stay for a drink?" Wang Yu also looked at them and said, her heart full of reluctance. In any case, they had been together for nearly a year, but now, they were finally going to part ways. Feng Zhou smiled and said, "We won't be attending the wedding banquet. We still have things to do at home, so we can't stay out for too long. However, we have prepared a congratulatory gift." She smiled and gestured to Ling Shuang. Ling Shuang stepped forward and took out a box from his space. "This is our wedding gift for you." Wang Yu did not open it. She just took the box and said, "Thank you. If you have a chance in the future, you must come again." "Well, if there's a chance, we'll come again." Feng Zhou smiled and walked out. When he arrived at the front yard of the hall, he stepped on the rainbow glaze feather and soared into the air. His red robe fluttered in the wind, looking unrestrained and dazzling. Du Fan and Yi Feifei looked at each other, then flew up on their swords and followed beside their master. Now, the matter had been dealt with. The patriarch of the He clan had died in battle, and the members of the He clan had moved out of Azure Demon City. The matter had come to an end. Chapter 43-31. Daddy. The two little fellows called out in a crisp voice. Xianyuan Mose walked over and sat down at the table. He glanced at the items in their hands and said, "Put away your toys and take out your books. I will check your homework from yesterday." Thus, the two little guys hurriedly put away their toys and took out their homework from their respective spaces. They placed the homework in front of their daddy and sat down obediently. Xianyuan Mose looked at the two sets of homework placed in front of him and glanced at them. He then flipped through them unhurriedly. The two little guys were still young. If they were in an ordinary family, they would probably only know how to play all day long and would not be exposed to such things at such an early age. However, as their children, they naturally started earlier than others because of their different background. Both sets of homework were written with a brush. Every stroke was regular and it could be seen that they were written with heart. Mu Chen's handwriting was neat and tidy, and the strokes were heavy. But Yu Er's handwriting was smaller, and some of the strokes were a little crooked. There was a lot of space between the words. Thus, after looking through the two sets of homework, he said, "Chen Er wrote very well. However, you don't have to use too much strength when holding the brush. When you write, Daddy will teach you more carefully." "Yes." Hearing his father's praise, the little guy looked at him with bright eyes. He was very happy. When Yu saw that her brother was praised, she could not sit still anymore. She quickly slid down from the stool and threw herself into her daddy's arms. She asked softly, "Daddy, Daddy, what about me? What about me?" Xianyuanmo's only felt his arms soften. He looked down and saw the little girl looking up at him with a pair of expectant eyes. His heart softened and his eyes naturally overflowed with love. He reached out and stroked his daughter's head. He said gently, "Yu's handwriting is also very good. I can see that you put in a lot of effort. However, you still need to continue to work hard and cannot slack off. You will remember Daddy's teachings. I will not be lazy." She was so happy that her eyes curved into crescents. She hugged her father with her chubby little arms and rubbed her little face against his chest. A trace of envy flashed across Mu Chen's eyes when he saw this scene. He was the elder brother and a young man. Most of the time, he couldn't throw himself into his father's arms and act coquettishly like his sister. So every time he saw his sister acting coquettishly towards his father, he really wished that he was a girl like her. "I won't give you any homework today. Just have fun. If there's anything you want to eat, just tell Lang Hua and the others and let the kitchen prepare it." Hearing her father's words, Yu's eyes lit up. Yu wants to eat lotus cake. Yu will go and tell Uncle Hua. While speaking, she left the bosom of Xianyuanmo's, and bouncing her little legs, she ran outside. Hui Lang, who was standing guard outside the courtyard, saw her come out. He smiled and said, "Yu run a bit slower." "Uncle Hui Lang, Daddy said that I don't need to do homework today. I can play today and let the kitchen prepare what I want to eat," she said with a smile and turned back to look at Hui Lang. Then, like a wisp of smoke, she ran toward the kitchen. "Do you want to play?" In the courtyard, Xianyuanmo's looked at his son and asked. Mu Chen thought about it and shook his head. "No." Chapter 43-32. Shen wants Daddy to teach me how to hold a brush and practice writing. The little fellow looked at him and said. Hearing this, Xianyuanmo slightly raised the corners of his mouth, revealing a smile. "Well, go to the study with Daddy." With that, he stood up and watched his son get down from the stool and walk to his side. Then he bent down and picked him up, and strode out. The little fellow didn't expect that his daddy would pick him up. For a moment, he was slightly stunned, and then hurriedly stretched out his small hands and hugged his daddy's neck. His eyes were shining, and he smiled contentedly. On the other side, Yu was full of joy and skipped all the way. Because she didn't find the Langhua, she went to the kitchen by herself. However, when she passed by the rockery, she tripped over a stone on the ground and lost her balance and fell forward. "Ah!" she exclaimed. Before she could react, her body had already fallen forward. Her hands rubbed against the ground, and a little blood oozed out. Hiss! Her little face turned pale. She only felt that her knees and palms were burning. It was very painful. She looked around and saw that there was no one around. Therefore, she stood up by herself. "Oh, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt." She blew at her scratched palm and comforted herself. Because her hand was injured, she couldn't pat off the dust on her body and check on the injury on her knee. So she stood for a while and then limped back to where she came from. Qin Axian and Bai Qingqing heard that Yama Lord exempted Yu from today's homework and said that she could let the kitchen prepare whatever she wanted to eat. Knowing that she was going to the kitchen, they walked and chatted as they walked to the kitchen. But they didn't expect that halfway, they would see Yu with her palms spread out and limping over. Seeing the blood seeping out from her knees as well as the blood on her palms, the complexion of these two people couldn't help but change, and they immediately stepped forward. "Yu what's wrong?" Seeing them, Yu stopped her footsteps, and with a trace of forbearance, she softly said, "You fell down, my hands and knees are very painful." It's okay. I'll help you apply some medicine." Qin Axian quickly comforted her and carried her back to the courtyard with Bai Qingqing. In the main courtyard, although Xianyuan Mose and Mu Qin had gone to the study, Hui Lang was still standing guard outside the courtyard. At this time, he saw that little Yu, who had been bouncing around a moment ago, had been carried back. Her knees and palms were bleeding and her little face was deathly pale, so he hurriedly stepped forward. "What's going on? You were fine just now. How did you get hurt in such a short time?" "She fell down. First I will help her clean up the wound and apply some medicine," Qin Axian said. Then looking at the hand of Yu, which was still bleeding, her heart couldn't help but sink. There was something wrong with this situation. Generally, even if one fell down and scraped the skin and bled, the wound wouldn't be bleeding like now. After all, the scraped wound wasn't deep, but Yu's wound was still losing blood from the time they discovered it. "Go and invite Yama Lord." Qin Axian carried Yu and quickly entered the courtyard, leaving behind a sentence to Hui Lang. Oh, okay. Hui Lang blanked out for a moment, then turned around and walked towards the study. Chapter 43-33. Qin Axian quickly cleaned the wound on her palm and said to Bai Qingqing, "Cut it open at the knee." "Okay." Bai Qingqing stepped forward to help and carefully cut open the knee of the trousers. Yu was originally wearing a pink dress with a pair of white long pants inside. But at this moment, there was a blood stain on the knee of the white pants she was wearing inside the dress. Especially when Bai Qingqing cut that piece of cloth on the knee, it revealed a small wound caused by the abrasion of the sand and stones. It was reasonable to say that this kind of wound would not bleed for a while, but that small wound was still bleeding. Looking at it, one's heart also followed suit. "You, this medicine will hurt a little, but it won't bleed for a while. Bear with it for a while," Qin Axian said softly. After seeing her nod, she took out the medicine to stop the bleeding and sprinkled it on her palm. She had used her master's hemostatic powder. Fortunately, once the powder was sprinkled on the wound, the blood stopped oozing out of the palm very quickly. In the study, Xianyuan Mose was teaching his son how to hold a brush and write when he saw Hui Lang rushing in. Master, Yu fell and her hand and knee are bleeding." Hearing this, his son's hand that was holding the brush paused, and the ink dripped onto the white paper and melted. In the next moment, he put down the brush and asked in a deep voice, "Did you fall very badly?" As he spoke, he had already walked out of the study table. When Mu Qin heard this news, he was also stunned for a moment. He quickly got down from the chair and planned to take a look. The trousers at the knee area are stained red with blood. I saw that her little face was a little pale. Qin Axian asked me to come over and invite you, so I came over immediately. Master, quickly go and take a look. As Grey Wolf spoke, he saw his master pick up his son from the side and bring him out. In the blink of an eye, the two people, one big and one small, disappeared from his sight. Hey, wait for me! Hui Lang shouted and quickly chased after them. Lang Hua and the others went outside to deal with some matters. When they returned, they faintly heard Hui Lang's voice and went in the direction of the sound. They did not see the Yama Lord and only stopped Hui Lang. What's wrong? Lang Hua asked, not knowing what happened. Hey! You guys are back. Just in time, let's go to the main courtyard to see little Yu. She fell, but I don't know what happened, but it seems that her injury is not light. I just came to tell Master that he is now taking little Chin to the main courtyard. Before he could finish speaking, he saw that they had already gone to the main courtyard. He immediately chased after them. Why? Even if you don't listen to me, you should at least wait for me. Why should I wait for you? It's not like I don't know the way. Wei Feng turned back and glanced at him. The next moment, he also started walking. Hui Lang muttered all the way to the main courtyard, but he saw that the people who arrived first could not enter the room and could only wait in the courtyard. He immediately went forward and looked at Ying Yi, who was guarding outside the room. Why are you all here? Are you not letting us in? Her wound is being treated. Why are you all going in? Ying Yi said and glanced at them. Just wait here. I heard from Qin Axian that the bleeding seems to have stopped. Didn't she fall? Why does it sound so serious? Fan Lin asked in confusion. I don't know. Ying Yi shook his head and said. Chapter 43-34. It doesn't hurt anymore. Little Yu Er shook her head as she spoke. Seeing that so many people were worried, her little face was full of guilt. It's all Yu Er's fault. Yu Er wasn't obedient and didn't walk properly, so I fell. Seeing his youngest daughter's expression, how could Xianyuanmo's bear to scold her again? He only gently patted her head and said, It's all right. After applying the medicine, you'll be fine very quickly. Next time, pay more attention when you walk and don't fall again. NN. Yu Er responded. She didn't know if it was because she had lost a lot of blood, but her little face was still pale. Moreover, there was a bit of tiredness on her little face. She leaned into her father's embrace and quietly watched them bandage her wound. Younger sister, if you want to sleep, then sleep. We'll stay here to accompany you. Little Mukin said. Because her hand was injured, it wasn't good for him to hold her hand. Therefore, he followed his father's example and stood on his tiptoes as he stretched out his little hand and gently patted her head. Be good, you'll be fine after sleeping. Hearing their voices, the little one slowly closed her eyes and fell asleep in her father's embrace. When the people in the room saw that she had fallen asleep, they also softened their voices. After Qin Axian finished bandaging the wound on her knee, she lowered her voice and said, My lord, let little Yu Er sleep. Let's go outside, I have some things to say. Hearing this, Xianyuanmo glanced at his daughter who was sleeping while leaning against him. He saw that she didn't seem to be sleeping very well, as if her wound was hurting. From time to time, she would wrinkle her little eyebrows. Therefore, he reached out and pressed her sleeping acupoint, wanting her to have a good sleep. He carefully took off her outer clothes and placed her on the bed. After covering her with a quilt, he indicated for them to go outside to talk. When the people waiting in the courtyard saw them come out, they first bowed to Xianyuanmo, My lord. Xianyuanmo responded and walked to the stone table to sit down. He looked at Qin Axian and said, Speak. Yes. Qin Axian looked at the others and nodded slightly to Fan Lin. Then she said, When I was treating the young master's wounds, I felt a little strange. Bruises usually ooze blood and quickly stop bleeding. The young master's palms and knees were not seriously scratched by the gravel and sand, but the small wounds kept oozing blood. It was very strange. Has the bleeding stopped? Fan Lin asked. I used the hemostatic medicine refined by master, and the bleeding stopped. Qin Axian said. Hearing this, everyone exchanged glances. Guillemot asked, Won't everything be fine if the bleeding stops? Why do you say it's strange? It's because the amount of blood flowing out from the wound is much more than the amount of blood flowing out from a small injury from the fall. This in itself isn't right. However, I can't put my finger on it. I just feel that something isn't right. That's why I'm a little worried about little master's body. Qin Axian said with a frown. Before Master left, he repeatedly told them to take good care of the two young masters and also told them about the serious situation. They had been very careful. However, she didn't know how to deal with this strange situation. Little Mu Chin stood at the side and listened. He didn't understand some of the words they said and didn't know what they meant. He only knew that it seemed that his sister's bleeding so much was a very serious matter. Chapter 43-35. Yes. Qin Axian and Bai Qingqing looked at each other and responded. After instructing them, Xianyuan Mose and Mu Qin went into the room to accompany Yu Er. When the people in the courtyard saw them enter the room, they motioned for Qin Axian and Mu Qin to go outside to talk. Yu Er just fell down. Is that all? Weren't you with her at that time? Fan Lin asked. Qin Axian shook her head. No, we met her halfway. She stood up and walked back. When she saw us, she didn't cry even though she fell down. Her little face was pale and she was enduring it. Then, she paused and said, "What do you think is the reason? That wound doesn't look serious. When she wakes up later, I'll check it for her." Fan Lin said and then said, "Yama Lord asked you to guard Yu Er. Take good care of her. Don't let anything happen to her, lest Master comes back and worries." I know. Qin Axian nodded and looked back at the closed door. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. We received news from Qi Kong and Luo Yu that they met Master. The matter over there is almost settled and they are already on the way. It won't take long for them to reach home. Leng Hua said from the side. Seeing that there was nothing else to do here, he said to everyone, "Go and rest first. Qin Axian, Qingqing and Hui Lang are here to guard. We'll come back later to take a look." They looked at each other and nodded. Because they went out to deal with the devil cultivators, they just came back. But they didn't expect to hear the news of Yu Er's injury as soon as they got home. But no matter what, the wound was already bandaged and she was fine. They went back to rest and thought that they would come back later to take a look. Qin Axian, Qingqing and Hui Lang stayed in the courtyard until night fell. In the room, Yu Er, who had slept, opened her eyes and saw her father and brother sitting by the bed. She softly called, "Father, brother. Yu Er, are you hungry? Get up and eat something before you sleep." Xianyuan Mose picked her up and helped her put on her coat. Then, he held her in his arms and called out to the outside, "Bring the food in." When Qin Axian and Bai Qingqing heard her voice, they responded. Qin Axian walked inside, while Bai Qingqing went to the kitchen to bring the dinner over. "Yama Lord, let me check Yu Er's pulse again," Qin Axian said and came to their side. Looking at Yu Er, she asked, "Yu Er, do your hands and knees still hurt?" Yu Er thought for a bit, then blinking her pair of beautiful big eyes, she softly said, "Not very painful. I'll change your dressing tomorrow. Come, let me feel your pulse." Qin Axian said softly and asked her to stretch out her hand. The little one obediently stretched out her hand. After watching her take back her hand, she said, "Aunt Qin, Yu Er is not sick." Listening to the little one's soft words, Qin Axian's heart softened. She softly said, "Yu Er is not in pain. Aunt Qin will check Yu Er. You don't need to take medicine." After saying that, she took a step back and bowed to Xianyuan Mose, "Yama Lord, Yu Er's body is fine, but her hands are injured. It's not good for her to eat. Do you want to feed her? Or should I do it?" "Ben Jun will do it," Xianyuan Mose said and said to Mu Qin, "You eat by yourself." Chapter 43-36. Okay, the little one answered obediently and raised her head to look at her father. Xianyuan scooped up some chicken soup for her to drink and said, "Drink this bowl of chicken soup, then eat some rice. Tonight's dishes are all your favorites. After you're done eating, there will be dessert, lotus cakes." Yes, Yu loves lotus cake the most. Yu smiled and her little face overflowed with joy. Her pair of eyes curved into crescents and she obediently opened her mouth to eat. Because her knee was injured, they did not let her get out of bed to walk. After the meal, Fan Lin also came to check her pulse. Just like Qin Xan, he could not find anything. The next day, when Qin Xan helped her change the dressing, she saw that the wound was almost healed. She was relieved and thought that maybe she was overthinking. Since the wound was healed and there was no abnormality in her pulse, she should be fine. After another 2 days, the injuries on Yu's palms and knees were completely healed. After staying in bed for a few days and not walking around, the bandages on her hands and knees were removed. She happily jumped on the ground and walked out. "Little sister, I am going to practice calligraphy. Do you want to come?" Mu Qin came to her side and asked. "Practice calligraphy? But my hand is just healed. I don't want to practice calligraphy," Yu said, and her little face wrinkled. Hearing this, Mu Qin thought for a while and said, "Then I will practice calligraphy and you will memorize." Okay. She then smiled and nodded in response. "I will hold your hand." Mu Qin took her hand and led her to the study. Qin Axian and Bai Qingqing, who were following behind, saw this and could not help but smile. The two little masters were really very likable. They were so obedient and sensible at such a young age. In the study, Xianyuan was copying some words for the two children to practice their handwriting. When he faintly heard their voices, he put down the brush in his hand, tidied up the things on the table, and walked out. "Daddy." As soon as the door opened, the two little fellows called out, "Come in." Xianyuan said as he gestured for the two of them to come in. At the same time, he asked, "What does Yu want to learn today?" "Daddy, Yu is memorizing books," the little one said with a smile. "All right, then memorize the 3-character classic. Memorize it first, then write it down from memory." As Xianyuan said, he bent down and picked her up. He walked to the 2 small desks that were specially made for the 2 little guys and put her down. After giving her the 3-character classic, he went to another desk to teach Mu Qin how to write. One of the children was immersed in writing, while the other was reading the 3-character classic with his back to the book. Their eyes fell on the portrait on the wall of the study. At birth, man's nature is good. Their natures are similar, but their habits are different. Yu closed the book and carried it on her back. Her pair of small hands were supporting her cheeks as she looked at the portrait on the wall. It was a portrait of her mother personally drawn by her father. Her mother was very beautiful in the drawing. Their mother had left the house before they were sensible enough to recognize her. Vaguely, they seemed to have a vague impression of her. However, ever since her father drew this portrait for them, their mother's appearance had been imprinted in their minds. Children don't learn, not suitable; young don't learn, old. Because she was distracted, she forgot what was next. She was about to flip the book when she heard her father's voice. Chapter 43-37. Young don't learn, old don't learn. She hurriedly recited and saw her father standing in front of her. "Why aren't you paying attention? What are you thinking about?" Xianyuan asked. Yu blinked and glanced at the portrait on the wall. She whispered, "Yu Mrs. Mommy." Hearing this, Xianyuan turned sideways and looked at the portrait of Fengzhou in red hanging on the wall. The person in the painting was looking at them with a smile. His eyes softened and he reached out to ruffle his daughter's hair. Your mother will be back soon. It won't be long before you can see her. Hearing this, the two children's eyes lit up. Really? Mommy is coming back. When will she be home? She is already on her way back. As for when she will be home, it will depend on her footsteps. Xianyuan Mo's lips curved slightly and his eyes were smiling. All right, you two stay here and practice your calligraphy. Daddy will go out for a while. Okay. The two little guys nodded. After watching him leave the study, Mu Chin got down from the desk and trotted to close the door before coming to Yu-Er's side. Brother, Daddy said Mommy is coming back. We will be able to see her. Yu-Er's eyes were shining and her little face was full of excitement. Yes, Mommy is coming back. Mu Chen's little face also overflowed with excitement. He could only vaguely remember that gentle hug when he was young and the voice that coaxed them to sleep every night to make them feel at ease. That was their mother. Their mother was coming back. Brother, let's ask Aunt Chin and the rest to take us to make new clothes tomorrow. I want to wear a beautiful new dress and wait for Mommy to come back. Hearing this, Mu Chin looked down at his little robe and said, The clothes we are wearing are very new. He thought for a while and said, But we can make a few more sets. He also wanted to wear the best clothes in front of Mommy. The two little guys discussed in the study. In the afternoon, they played around in the residence. In the evening, Yu-Er returned to the courtyard first, but when she passed by the garden, her footsteps paused and her eyes looked ahead. Yu-Er, what's wrong? Qin Axian and Bai Qingqing both asked and looked ahead, but there was no one. Yu-Er blinked her eyes and looked in front, then looked at Qin Axian and Bai Qingqing. She said, There seems to be someone in front. Someone's there. The two of them were slightly taken aback before they laughed. You must be mistaken. Apart from us, there are only a few servants in the mansion. Outsiders are not allowed to enter. Furthermore, we didn't see anyone in front of us. Yu-Er blinked and did not say anything. How about this? You bring Yu-Er back to the courtyard first. I'll go to the kitchen and bring the food over. Bai Qingqing said. All right. Qin smiled, then holding Yu-Er's hand, Yu-Er, let's go, let's return. Oh. Yu-Er responded and continued to walk forward while holding her hand. While walking, she looked around. The sky was dark in the evening and a gentle breeze blew, bringing a chill to her body. She could not help but shrink a little. What's wrong? Are you cold? Qin Axian stopped and asked. Yes, there's a breeze. It's so cold. The little one said and looked up at her. Chapter 43-38. N. Yu-Er answered, and hugging her neck with both hands, she shrunk her whole body into her bosom, only using the corner of her eyes to look all around. Qin Axian carried Yu-Er back, and when she walked forward, her eyes swept all around, but she indeed didn't see anything. Although she was puzzled in her heart, but she didn't say anything, and just carried her back to the courtyard. Arriving at the courtyard, she put on another set of clothes for her, and closed the doors and windows, then asked, Are you still cold? Not cold. Yu-Er shook her head, and said with a smile. Hearing this, Qin Axian smiled, then that's good. Aunt Qin, my mother is coming back. I am very happy. Yu-Er pulled her sleeve, and looking up at her with a smile, she said. Master is already on the way back, perhaps it won't be long before she arrives home. At that time, you don't need to look at the portrait in the study room. Qin Axian said with a smile. Mother is coming back, can I sleep with Mother every night? She blinked her eyes and asked. Hearing this, Qin Axian couldn't help but chuckle, and said, then you have to ask your father about this. Your mother has been gone for almost a year, and not only you, your father also misses her. So it's like this. She tilted her head and thought for a bit, then said, then we will sleep together as a family. I and my brother will sleep in the middle, and father and mother will sleep beside us. She excitedly clapped her hands, as if she was endlessly happy for her good idea. Bai Qingqing came in with one hand holding something, and with the other hand, she pushed open the door and came in. Seeing Yu smiling so happily, she asked with a smile, what are you talking about? So happy. I am talking about Master coming back. Yu said that she wants to sleep with Master every night. Qi Naxian said with a smile, then stepped forward and took the tray from her hand, and put down the things. The two maids following behind also put down the things, then withdrew, leaving only Bai Qingqing and Qi Naxian in the room. My father is not coming back to eat. What about my brother? Do they want to eat together? Yu asked while looking at both of them. Yama Lord is still dealing with some matters. He told us not to wait for him. Mu Chen has already sent someone to get him. He should be here soon, Bai Qingqing said as she scooped 2 bowls of soup. Sister. Mu Chen walked in and saw that there were only the 3 of them in the room. He walked to the table and sat down. Big brother, eat. Yu said while sitting there looking at him. Qi Naxian and Bai Qingqing looked at the 2 children who looked exactly the same. They brought the stew to them and asked, do you need us to feed you? No need, I'll eat it myself, Mu Chen said as he sipped the soup with a spoon. Upon seeing this, Yu also shook her head. Yu can also eat by herself. She also imitated her brother and ate by herself. Qi Naxian and Bai Qingqing smiled and helped them pick up the food. After the meal, the 2 asked the maids to come in and clean up the dishes on the table, then prepared to help them bathe. At night, Yu who was sleeping soundly, suddenly frowned. Her hands tightly grasped the quilt, and cold sweat seeped out of her forehead. Xianyuanmos had not returned, so Bai Qingqing was guarding outside the room. Qi Naxian was guarding the table outside the room, and the one sleeping beside Yu on the bed was little Mu Chen. Everyone who was standing at the side did not dare to breathe, but each and every one of them held their breath and looked at the little person on the bed. They heard her calling for father, then calling for mother, then calling for pain, and then calling for fear. They felt as if their hearts were being cut by a knife, and they wished they could be in her place. Mu Chen tightly pursed his lips and clenched his little fist as he looked at his sister's appearance. His little face was tense, and there was unconcealable worry in his eyes. He did not know what happened to her, but he knew that her situation was not very good. He wanted to help her, but he didn't know how to. Chapter 43-40. PFFF. Woo, Daddy. Yu also woke up at the same time as she vomited a mouthful of blood. She cried and threw herself into her daddy's embrace. Her trembling little body tightly hugged him. Daddy is here. It's okay, it's okay. Xianyuanmos hugged her and gently patted her back with one hand. Little Mu Chen saw that his sister had woken up and finally relaxed. His originally tense body also relaxed. You all go out first. We will help you, to treat her wounds. Qi Naxian said to everyone who was surrounding the room. All right. Wei Feng, Grey Wolf, and the others replied, and then they glanced at each other before walking out. Mu Chen, let's go out. Leng Hua stepped forward and led Mu Chen, who was sitting at the corner of the bed, out. Xianyuanmos wiped the blood from the corner of Yu's mouth. Seeing that her white underwear was stained with blood, he said, Daddy will take a look at your wounds. But he saw that the little girl was tightly hugging him and didn't let go. She buried her head in his bosom and her body was still slightly trembling. Seeing this, he was worried about her injuries. He felt pity and self-reproach in his heart. His daughter was still so young, but she was scared to this extent. Be good. It's okay. Daddy is here. It's okay. He could only gently comfort her. He gently patted her head. When he felt that her trembling gradually subsided, he opened his mouth. It's okay. Daddy will accompany you. Come, let Daddy take a look at your wounds. Your wounds are bleeding. I need to apply medicine. Yu, who was shrinking in Xianyuan Mose's embrace, blinked her eyes. Suddenly, she cried loudly, Wah! Whoa whoa! Daddy, Yu is very scared. Yu is very scared. Daddy is not here to save you, Mother is also not here, brother is also not here, Uncle Hua is also not here, Uncle Hui Lang is also not here, Aunt Qin is also not here. Yu is alone. She convulsed and cried loudly, as if she wanted to vent the fear in her heart. Her tears were like a flood that broke through the dam, unstoppable. As Xianyuan Mose listened, his heart tightened. How scared was his daughter at that moment? How helpless was that? He hugged her tightly and could only say, It's Daddy's fault. Daddy didn't protect you well. It's Daddy's fault. When the people outside heard the conversation inside, they were all silent and their faces were tense. What do you think is going on? Hui Lang asked. In spirit. Wei Feng's face sank as killing intent surged within his eyes. How can a ghost have such an ability? If it was a ghost, it wouldn't be able to enter our house, let alone by Yu's side. No, it should be a dream. Guamo said in a deep voice. His originally cold face became even colder. Right now, I just want to know if the Yama Lord has destroyed the thing that's pestering you, If she sleeps again, will she? As Leng Hua spoke, his voice paused and he sighed silently. Fan Lin frowned and said, It seems to have started from that fall a few days ago. That fall wasn't normal, but it didn't show, but unexpectedly. Everyone was silent, not knowing what to say. They also didn't want anything to happen to the two little masters, but when they saw you, suddenly like this, they all thought of that old Taoist's words. Chapter 43-41. Inside the room, Qinshin had already treated all the wounds on Yu's body. Fortunately, all of them were only superficial wounds, and after a trace of blood seeped out, there was no more bleeding. Merely, even if this was the case, but seeing those small wounds caused by wind blades on the little person's white and tender body, their hearts still clenched. After saluting, the two quietly retreated, leaving only the father and daughter in the room. After they came out, Mu Qin went inside again because he was worried about his sister. How is it? Did you apply medicine to the wounds? Leng Hua asked. I did. Fortunately, it's only superficial wounds, it's not a big deal, Qin Xian said and sighed softly. She suffered so much at such a young age, my heart clenched just looking at her. Where's Fan Lin? Qin Xian looked around and didn't see Fan Lin, so she asked. He went to the kitchen to boil a calming soup. He said that Yu was frightened and that she would feel better after drinking a bowl of it. Leng Hua said. Hearing this, Qin Xian nodded, and she was frightened a lot. She used to be so smart, but now her voice is trembling a little. She also kept hugging the Yama Lord tightly and refused to let go. She's really frightened. Drinking a bowl of calming soup will make her feel better. In the room, Yu was nestled in Xianyuan Mose's arms, her small hands tightly clutching his robes. She whispered, that person was very ugly. He kept chasing me and even stuck out his long tongue to lick me. He said that her has an innate spiritual body and that she smells good and is delicious. Her kept running, and running. A cold wind blew on and her got injured. Her kept calling for Daddy, but Daddy didn't appear. As she spoke, she raised her head, her eyes still filled with fear as she asked, Father, will that person come again? Will he still want to eat her? Why would he want to eat her? Her is not delicious. Xianyuan Mo's eyes were full of self-blame and pity. He gently rubbed her head and said, her, be good. Don't be afraid. With Daddy here, it won't dare to come again. Mu Chen watched and listened from the side. He understood some of it and some of it he didn't, so he asked, Daddy, what is that? Xianyuan Mo looked at him and then at his daughter in his arms and said, it's a ghost. It's not a human, but an evil creature. Don't be afraid of it because it can't get close to you. I'll teach you a set of skills to protect yourself. You have to learn it diligently. Then, he looked at Mu Chen. You should also listen carefully and learn. Mu Chen hummed in response and sat by the side. He listened attentively and memorized every word his father said and taught him. At this moment, Feng Zhou, who was on her way back, did not know that something had happened at home. They traveled on their swords from Azure Demon City. Even if there were any delays on the way back, about 10 days of travel would be enough. Therefore, their speed was not considered fast, but it was not slow either. Until one day, Ling Shuang, who was resting by the roadside, heard Leng Hua's voice and quickly came to Feng Zhou's side. Master, Hua sent news that something has happened at home. Hearing this, Feng Zhou frowned and asked, what happened? Qi Kong, Du Fan, and the others also gathered around and looked at Ling Shuang, waiting for her to continue. Chapter 43-42. Wounds caused by rubbing sand and stones usually stop bleeding after a small drop of blood. Even if you don't apply medicine, it will heal by itself in a day or two. But Mrs. Wound wasn't deep, but she lost a lot of blood. Since that day, Qin Axian helped to apply medicine and bandage her wound. She recovered after a few days. But last night, something happened again. Feng Zhou's heart jumped and she said, continue. While Miss was sleeping, a wound suddenly appeared on her body. It was as if she was having a nightmare. Her small face was deathly pale and she was sweating all over. But she didn't wake up. Finally, the Yama Lord used his yang qi and ancient pressure to protect her body. Only after she spat out a mouthful of blood did she wake up. They were discussing it. It is said that the Yama Lord said that it should be a ghost entering her dream. Hearing this, Feng Zhou's hands tightly clenched into fists. She asked, did Leng Hua say how her is now? Right now, the King of Hell is accompanying her day and night. However, Miss has been frightened. Although she drank the calming soup, her condition hasn't been very good for the past 2 days. Therefore, he wants to see if we can hurry back. Hearing this, Feng Zhou stood up and said, I will go back first. You all can come back later. After saying this, she didn't wait for them to say anything. She raised her qi and in a breath's time, her figure had already disappeared into the clouds. A few days later, the travel-worn Feng Zhou arrived at the gate of the residence alone. Looking at the familiar gate, she didn't knock on the door. Instead, she directly raised her qi and quietly jumped in. Master is back. The 2 lions lying on the ground at the gate were pleasantly surprised to see Feng Zhou dressed in red. They propped themselves up and called out to her. But they only saw her raise her qi and jump into the residence. Master. The fire phoenix had originally landed on a big tree in the residence. When it saw that familiar figure, it promptly flapped its wings and flew forward. Leng Hua, Fan Lin and others were walking and chatting about Yu Er's condition. Then, they saw a red figure flitting over their heads and heading towards the main courtyard. It's Master. Master is back. They were slightly startled. Then, they were pleasantly surprised and quickly followed. In the main courtyard, Xianyuan Mose was feeding Yu Er porridge. Seeing that she only ate 2 or 3 mouthfuls, he said in a low voice, "You must eat more, otherwise your body will not get well. Let brother eat, Yu Er is full." It had only been a few days, but she had lost a lot of weight and looked listless. Mu Chen, who was sitting beside her, said, "Mother's, eat this bowl of porridge." Mother by Moses, U.S. by the side of Mother's S's, fathers of U.S. Estes uses as U.S.'s U.T.'s S ofs. U.T.'s S's and hers of course. Chapter 43-43. Seeing that little person dashing towards them with her little legs and her little face full of excitement and joy, Fengjiu's heart softened. She hastily stepped forward and caught her daughter who was dashing towards them. Her little body crashed into her bosom, and she felt that she was tightly hugging her without letting go. A low sobbing sound came from her bosom, and she could faintly feel that her lapel was wet. Hearing that soft sobbing sound, her heart tightened. She gently patted her daughter's back with one hand and gently caressed her head. She comforted her in a soft voice, "It's okay, it's okay. Mother is here, Mother is back. Mother." Yu Er raised her head from her bosom. Crying like a little kitten, her soft voice carried a bit of sobbing. She said, "Yu Er misses Mother. Mother will always accompany you, okay? Okay, Mother will always accompany you, From now on, Mother will always accompany you, She held her daughter's little face and gently kissed her forehead. "Don't cry. Are you crying like a little kitten?" While speaking, she used a handkerchief to wipe the tears on her daughter's face. Her finger lightly scratched her daughter's nose, and she chuckled, "Look what Mother brought back for you." With a wave of her hand, a snow-white nine-tailed fox came out from her space and obediently laid on the ground. It only raised its head to look at Yu Er, and again looked at Fengjiu. "Little white fox. Mother, it's little white fox." When the little person saw the snow-white nine-tailed fox, she was surprised and happy. She hurriedly squatted down and wanted to pick it up. But she was only 2 years old, so she estimated that she was not as heavy as the nine-tailed fox. She was basically unable to pick up the nine-tailed fox. "Shrink a bit." Fengjiu glanced at the nine-tailed fox and commanded with her divine sense. Being swept by her gaze, the nine-tailed fox immediately flashed and its body shrunk again. 8 of its 9 tails were also hidden, leaving only one outside. It was so small that it looked like a little white cat. Yu Er easily picked it up, and happily giggled. While looking at Fengjiu, she said, "Thank you Mother, little white fox is really cute, it can also become small, Yu Er likes it very much. It's good that you like it. Let it play with you first. Later, Mother will help you contract it. In the future, it will be your playmate. If you are in danger, just call it and it will come out to help you." Fengjiu's gentle gaze fell on her body, and the expression in his eyes naturally overflowed with a kind of light called motherly love. "Mother." Mu Chen also ran over, but he did not throw himself into Fengjiu's arms. Instead, he looked at her with a hint of shyness, nervousness, and excitement. "Mother, I'm Mu Chen." He said his name with a serious face. "Yes, I know. You're Mu Chen, my son." Fengjiu chuckled. Looking at the little fellow, he couldn't help but reach out and pull him into his arms, kissing him again and again. Come, 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 let mother kiss little Chen. Fengjiu said with a smile, hugging him and kissing his pink cheeks. When she saw the little fellow in her arms blinking his beautiful eyes shyly at her, she couldn't help but chuckle. Chen, are you shy? Fengjiu teased him, saying, when you were young, mother often hugged and kissed you like this, don't you remember? Chapter 43-44. Mother kissed him. She kissed him so many times. The little guy's long eyelashes fluttered like two beautiful butterflies, and his pair of beautiful black eyes reflected his mother's face. Hearing his mother's words, he stretched out his small hands and hugged her neck, and his immature voice contained a strong affection for a child. Mother, Chen, also Mrs. Mother. If mother goes out in the future, can you take Chen with you? Chen doesn't want to be separated from mother. Hearing this, Fengjiu's heart softened. She gently stroked his head and softly answered, okay, from now on, wherever mother goes, take Chen with you. Me too, me too. Yu hugged the little white fox and squeezed forward, and nestled into Fengjiu's bosom. He, yes, you too. Mother, there's also father. Yu said with a beaming smile. Looking at her handsome father who was standing not far away with his hands behind his back, and again looking at her mother who was as beautiful as a flower beside her, her small face was full of happy smile. That's great, mother came back. From now on, their family won't be separated. Okay, there's also your father. From now on, our family will be together, and won't be separated. She softly smiled, and looked at Xianyuanmo's in front of her. Two people's four eyes met, tenderness and longing intertwined in their eyes, and finally turned into unspoken deep affection. Xianyuanmo's came over, and when he came to her side, Fengjiu also stood up, and was embraced by him. It's good that you're back. His deep and low voice, with his unique charming magnetism, entered her ears, making her ears go limp and numb, and making her heart ripple. Along with the slight raise of the corner of her mouth, a smile bloomed on her lips. I'm back. She softly said, and tightly hugged his waist, burying her face in his chest, and smelling the familiar smell of his body, she only felt exceptionally at ease. The two little fellows stood beside them and looked up at the scene of their father and mother hugging each other. They couldn't help but smile happily. Outside the courtyard, when Leng Hua and the others saw this scene, their hearts overflowed with a feeling called gratitude. Putting aside their noble status, they were actually just an ordinary family. A pair of adorable children, a loving couple, reuniting after a long time. This scene moved the hearts of those who had watched them walk step by step. They only felt an indescribable feeling spreading in their hearts. There was gratification, relief, and blessings. They quietly retreated, leaving the space for the family to reunite. In the evening, Ling Shuang, Du Fan, and the others returned to the residence. Sister, master came back before you. Leng Hua looked at Ling Shuang and saw the exhaustion on her face. He asked, isn't there a teleportation formation? Why didn't you use the teleportation array to come back? Du Fan and the others sat down in the front courtyard, sipping tea and resting. Ling Shuang said, we followed Qi Kong to deal with some matters on the way back, and on the way back, we didn't receive any news from you, so we didn't know that something had happened to Little Mississippi. She then asked, how is it now? Chapter 43-45. Hearing this, Ling Shuang frowned and asked, didn't you think of a way to make her eat something? She's still so young, we can't go on like this. Yes, Qin Axian and Qingqing have been trying different ways to make her favorite food these days, but they couldn't eat it and would stop eating after 1 or 2 bites. But today, Master came back and I saw you eat a bowl of porridge. Her appetite has improved a lot. She didn't have much energy these days, but seeing Master come back, she's been very energetic all day. Ling Hua said warmly. That's good. Ling Shuang nodded and finally felt relieved. By the way, how was your trip? Did you take care of everything? Ling Hua looked at Qi Kong and asked. Don't worry. It's all taken care of. When we arrived at Azure Demon City, we didn't expect to meet Master and the others. With Master and the others around, it's twice the result with half the effort. Luo Yu grinned and said, later on the way back, we destroyed 2 places where evil cultivators appeared on the way. That's why it took some time. Do you want to rest first? Or do you want to see Master and Yama Lord? Ling Hua asked. Let's go see them first. I haven't seen the 2 little masters for so long, I have to go see them first. Du Fan said and stood up with a smile. Well, let's go together. They're in the main courtyard. Ling Hua said and waited for them to rest for a while. After drinking a cup of tea, they walked to the backyard together. In the backyard, Fengjiu looked at the 2 children in front of him and said, the 2 contracted beasts Mother found for you are both ancient mythical beasts. As long as you contract them, it will only be good for you. But now, you're still young. Even if you have innate spiritual bodies in a divine fetus, you're still not strong. So after contracting them, the strength of these 2 originally very strong ancient mythical beasts will be suppressed. The 2 children listened and didn't understand. Mother, is Chen Er's contracted beast really a Qilin? Mu Chen asked curiously. Fengjiu smiled and answered, yes, it's a fire Qilin. Look. She waved her hand and released the fire Qilin from her space. The fire Qilin flew out. Because it didn't dare to cause too much of a commotion, it only circled around the courtyard. When it saw the fire phoenix resting on Fengjiu's shoulder, it glanced and then looked away. Then it turned to look at Xianyuan Mo's, and finally, the human child who would contract with it. So it's this little brat. So weak. With that thought in mind, it circled around to Mu Chen's side, retracted the flames on its body, and laid down at his feet. How to be a Qilin. When he saw the fire Qilin lying obediently at his feet, he couldn't help but happily reach out and carefully touch the scales on its body, as well as the Qilin horn on its head. His beautiful eyes were filled with curiosity and surprise. Chen do you like it? Fengjiu asked with a smile. She rested her chin on one hand and watched him touch the Qilin horn. Yes, I like it. Mother, it looks very powerful. The little guy couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. Qilin heard this and proudly raised its head. As if to confirm Mu Chen's words, it jumped up and flew into the air. It opened its mouth and spat a flame into the sky. Wow! It can spit fire. Chapter 43-46. Seeing the excited and shocked appearance of the 2 little guys, Fire Qilin's performance became more energetic. In the end, Fengjiu was worried that its continuous spitting of fire would attract the suspicion of those people in the city, so he laughed and shouted, all right, come down. Don't show off. Fire Phoenix, who was standing on Fengjiu's shoulder, disdainfully glanced at Fire Qilin. It disapproved of its fire-spitting trick. It was also of the fire attribute, and the fire it spouted wasn't ordinary fire. It wouldn't show off its fire-spitting trick like this. After Fire Qilin heard Fengjiu's words, it came down and circled around before returning to Mu Chen's side to lie down. Looking at this scene, little Yu couldn't help but lower her head to look at the little white fox in her arms and asked, Mother, what can this little white fox do? Can it also spit fire? It can't spit fire, but it's also very powerful. Fengjiu smiled and then said, "Come, put them here. I'll help them break the contract and then help you two contract." When Lang Hua and Du Fan arrived, they saw Fengjiu in the courtyard helping the two little masters contract two ancient mythological beasts. Therefore, they didn't disturb them and waited outside, quietly watching. Only when they saw that the contract was completed and the two contracted beasts had entered the space of the two little masters, did they walk in. "Master, Yama Lord." Du Fan and the others walked in and saluted them. "You've arrived." Fengjiu glanced at them and smiled, "It seems that you're not much slower than me. We've also just arrived." Du Fan smiled and said, "Thinking that we haven't seen the two little masters for almost a year, we came to let the little masters recognize us." While speaking, he looked at Mu Qin and Yu Qin, Yu do you still recognize them? Fengjiu smiled and asked, looking at the two little guys sizing them up. The two shook their heads. They didn't recognize them. "Little master, I'm Du Fan." "They are still young, so you don't have to call them little masters." As Fengjiu spoke, he looked at the two little guys and then at Du Fan and the others. "You've seen them being born, so just call them by their names." Fengjiu paused and said to the two children, "You can call him Uncle Du or Uncle Fan. They've been with mother for a long time, so they're like family. You should call them uncle, okay?" "Yes, yes." The two children nodded, then looked at Du Fan and called out, "Uncle Fan." Seeing this, Du Fan hurriedly said, "Then we'll call them by their nickname at home, and call them young master and young mistress in front of others. We can't do without rules." "Up to you." Fengjiu said indifferently and didn't argue about how to address them. He just smiled and said, "You can introduce yourselves. After all, you followed me out when they didn't know how to recognize people. It's normal that they don't recognize you now." Thus, the few people who went out introduced themselves. The two children were also well behaved and obediently called them one by one. She smiled and said, "Go and see what delicious food the kitchen has prepared tonight." "Okay." The two little fellows responded. After informing their father, they walked out hand in hand. After the two children left, Fire Phoenix, who had been parked at the side, also followed after them. Only Xianyuanmos and Fengjiu were left in the courtyard. Chapter 43-48. Hearing her words, Xianyuanmos said, "I've been using ancient power to protect her these past few days. That's why she's been able to sleep peacefully. As you said, this ghost enters her dreams and isn't easy to deal with." He paused and said, "Actually, I wanted to release you or seal. Even if the ghost reappears when she falls asleep, I would let her burn it with the Red Lotus Hellfire. However, I was worried that she would not be able to control the Red Lotus Hellfire, so using the Red Lotus Hellfire to deal with it is a last resort. You is still young, so I don't recommend it," Fengjiu said slowly. After thinking for a while, he said, "You has contracted the nine-tailed spiritual fox. Normally, if you is in danger, it can come out to help. However, I don't know if the nine-tailed spiritual fox can appear in this dream." Xianyuanmos gently tapped the stone table with one hand, as a deep voice slowly came out of his mouth. "Actually, there's another way, and that's to find the true body of that ghost and destroy it. Naturally, that way, it won't be able to cause any trouble. These days, I have tried to find the ghost's real body. However, I have found nothing." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and said, "Then let me try." Xianyuanmos looked at her and asked, "You?" "Yes, I will find the ghost's real body." She smiled, but there was no smile in her eyes. Instead, there was coldness in her eyes. She said lightly, after finding the ghost's real body, I will destroy its soul so that it will never be reincarnated. In the main courtyard, the couple, who had not seen each other for a long time, finished discussing the two children's matters and talked about the recent events. Others knew that the two of them were in the courtyard, so they did not disturb them. Instead, they prepared dinner. After dinner was ready, the two children called them to the front hall to eat. The group, who had not met for a long time, sat around the table and chatted until late at night. Xianyuanmos and Fengjiu each carried a sleeping child to the main courtyard. The two children were nestled in their arms, but in the end, they fell asleep in their arms. As they were worried that the night wind would cause them to catch a cold, the two wrapped the children in their coats and brought them back to the main courtyard. Qingqing, prepare some hot water. I want to wipe the two children's bodies. Fengjiu ordered outside. Yes. Qingqing, who was waiting outside, responded. She brought in some hot water and placed it on the small table beside the bed. Seeing the two children sleeping on the big bed, she said, Master, do you want me to do it? No, I'll do it. Fengjiu said. She took the handkerchief and soaked it in it before wiping their faces. Then, she untied their clothes and wiped their bodies. Only then did she ask Qingqing to bring the water out. You have a child, go take a bath and rest early. I'll take care of the two children. Xianyuanmos walked over and told her to take a shower first. Then I'll go take a bath first. I'll come over later. Fengjiu said, letting her accompany the two children. Then, he went out. Because he was worried that Yu would not sleep well, Xianyuanmos used his pressure to protect her. Only when the night gradually deepened, did he see Fengjiu come back. Fengjiu saw that Yu was sleeping soundly under the protection of Mo's pressure, so he also laid down beside the two children. After rushing back, he was indeed somewhat tired. After lying on the bed and talking with Xianyuanmos, he also fell asleep. Chapter 43-49. The next morning, Fengjiu still hadn't woken up, but she felt that there were two eyes staring at her. She slowly opened her eyes and saw the two little fellows lying on the bed with their hands supporting their chins while staring at her. When she woke up early in the morning, she saw the two identical exquisite little faces. She couldn't help but reveal a smile. Why did you wake up so early? We were worried that Mother would disappear when we woke up, but when we woke up this morning, we saw Mother sleeping beside us. Mother, you were snoring like a little pig just a moment ago. Yu said with a beaming smile. Her pair of beautiful eyes curved into crescent moons because of her smile. Mu Chen, who was at the side, didn't speak, only blinking his pair of sparkling eyes looking at his mother. Really? Mother was actually snoring. Fengjiu was slightly surprised, with a surprised expression. Her appearance amused the two little fellows, and the two little fellows giggled. Their little body rolled over and over on the bed, and again rolled into her bosom. Awake? Then get up and wash up, breakfast is already prepared. Xianyuanmos walked in, and seeing one big and two little fellows rolling on the bed, he couldn't help but secretly shook his head. So, after Fengjiu accompanied the two little fellows to play for a while, she took them to get up and wash up. After eating breakfast, she didn't accompany the two little fellows, rather Xianyuanmos took them to the study to practice writing and memorize books. Then she called Leng Hua and others. Mistress. Leng Hua, Qin Axayan, by Qingqing, and the others bowed and greeted her respectfully. I called you all over to ask you, recently, did you go out? Or did she bring something back? All of you, tell me everything in detail. Fengjiu sat in the main courtyard drinking tea, and at the same time, she let them talk about the things Yu had done in this period of time. If he wanted to uncover the true identity of the ghost, he would have to start investigating from there. After knowing her plan, they carefully recalled everything that had happened during this period of time to her. And Qin Axian and Qing Qing went to take out all the things that Yu had bought during this period of time, or the new treasures that she had obtained during this period of time. Early in the morning, Fengjiu had been investigating, but until noon, there was no clue. She put all the little trinkets and pearl-like treasures back and handed them to Qing Qing. Take these back and give them to you, There's no problem with that. As she spoke, her brows furrowed slightly. She couldn't figure out what was going on. Since he didn't touch anything dirty, why would he be haunted by a ghost? Are you sure you didn't leak out the things that happened during this period of time? Fengjiu looked at Lang Hua and asked. No, some time ago, Miss was very naughty, and even sneaked out. Later, she was grounded by the Yama Lord, but nothing happened. Only that day when she fell down, the bleeding from her wound was a little strange, but later, after applying medicine and bandaging, it was fine. After a few days, that thing happened. Lang Hua said truthfully. Hearing this, Fengjiu pondered. She played with the lid of the teacup with one hand, and then gently put it down and picked it up again. She always felt that she seemed to have overlooked something, but what was it? For a moment, she couldn't find the thing that she had overlooked. Chapter 43-51. Youth, who was originally walking forward in a daze, suddenly heard her mother's voice. She only felt her spirit clear up, then she abruptly came back to her senses. Mother. She turned her head, and her expression was somewhat sluggish. Fengjiu almost flashed, and in a blink of an eye, she arrived at her side and hugged her. After feeling her being hugged, she exhaled, and her anxious heart finally relaxed. You scared Mother to death, she said, while holding her with one hand, and using the other hand, she touched her face. How are you? Are you all right? Mother, what happened to you, just now? The little person didn't understand and asked. She looked towards that pool, and doubtfully blinked her eyes. Fengjiu looked towards that pool. The pool was as tranquil as before, and only when a light breeze brushed past, the water rippled. This pool was located at the side of the rockery, mainly for ornamental purposes. The water in this pool was also not deep, so it could be said that it couldn't hide anything. But the water was not deep, but it was more than enough to drown a 2 or 3 years old child. Her gaze moved away from the pool, and swept all around. She didn't answer Yu's question, rather asked, You, that day, did you fall at this rockery? Over there. Her little hand pointed towards the place where she fell. Seeing this, Fengjiu held her little hand and walked towards the place where she pointed. Along with her approaching, the bell on her waist issued a subtle sound. Mother, this bell is ringing. Yu curiously looked at that small pendant on her waist. Fengjiu lowered her head and took a look. This was given to her by her big sister, Wanyan Qianhua. Only when evil approached, this bell would issue a sound, but now, she stopped her steps, and swept the ground of the rockery with her divine sense. She saw that under the ground, something seemed to be in the process of quietly moving towards the depths. Immediately, she signaled Yu to withdraw, then condensing her spiritual power, she attacked towards that underground. Shio! Bang! Swift and fierce sound of airflow came, and with a bang sound, the ground exploded. At the same time, sand and soil splashed, and something seemed to fly out from the ground, and almost without stopping, it wanted to escape far away. Trying to escape. Fengjiu coldly snorted. With a wave of his hand, a talisman flew out and wrapped around the object. With a hiss, the object fell from mid-air to the ground. Faintly, a sharp and mournful sound could be heard. The commotion attracted Xianyuanmos and the others. They hadn't gone far yet and quickly turned back, just in time to see Fengjiu throwing out the talisman. What happened? Xianyuanmos asked as he came to their side. That thing has been pulled out, Fengjiu said as his gaze fell on the front. Seeing this, Du Fan quickly stepped forward and picked up the item wrapped in the talisman. Upon closer inspection, he saw that it was a pitch-black pearl. Thus, he said to Fengjiu and the others, "Master, Yama Lord, this is a spiritual pearl. However, this spiritual pearl has a yin spirit attached to it. Give it to me. Later, I will use heavenly fire to refine it." Fengjiu said as he took that unremarkable pearl from Du Fan's hand. When the pearl entered her hand, she felt a trace of blood on it. Chapter 43-52. Hearing that, the crowd nodded. That was the only explanation that made sense. The people living in this residence weren't ordinary cultivators. If the residence wasn't clean, they would have known long ago. Moreover, even if there was, ordinary yin spirits wouldn't be able to stay by their side. After all, putting aside the fact that Yama Lord and their master were the lords of heaven and earth, just their pressure and aura alone made it so that yin spirits wouldn't dare to live in this place. Moreover, their cultivations weren't low. Even the most brainless yin spirits wouldn't dare to take such a big risk to stay in this place. The only possibility was that, as their master said, the wisp of yin spirit hidden in the spiritual pearl was originally sleeping, or was on the verge of dissipating. It was coincidentally awakened by Yu-Er's blood, and thus entangled with Yu-Er. Xianyuanmos lowered his head and glanced at his daughter beside him. He patted her head and asked, "Yu-Er, are you all right?" "I'm fine. Mother is here." She raised her face and revealed a smile. "That's good." Seeing this, Xianyuanmos' lips also curled up. Fengjiu turned around and looked at Xianyuanmos and the two children beside him. She said, "You two go back to the courtyard first. I'll go back after I deal with this place." Xianyuanmos was very confident in her work, so he didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he brought his children to the main courtyard. After they left, Fengjiu said to Leng Hua, "Fill in this place and rebuild it." "Yes." Leng Hua responded. He watched as she turned around and walked to the side of the pond. She took out the black spiritual pearl and threw it. A cluster of flames flew out from her palm and wrapped around the pearl. When the mournful cry sounded, Fengjiu waved her hand and formed a soundproof barrier to prevent the sound from scaring her two children. At the same time, she increased the intensity of the flame. As her flame grew bigger, pieces of black ashes fell from the bead, and were blown away by the wind and fell into the pool. "I don't dare. Let me go. Please let me go." The sound of begging for mercy was accompanied by shrill screams. However, Fengjiu's face was cold, and there was no expression at all. "You've touched my reverse scale, and you want me to let you go? Ha! Don't worry, my natal heavenly fire can burn your remaining soul into ashes and make you disappear from this world. You won't even be able to enter hell." Her cold voice rang out from her mouth. With a flip of her palm, a flame burned with a hoo-hoot sound. As time passed, the voice of the yin spirit hidden in the spiritual bead grew weaker and weaker. Its soul was devoured by the flame bit by bit until it was burned to ashes and disappeared from the world. Bang! The spiritual pearl exploded and turned into ashes that scattered in the pond. The fish in the pond scrambled to devour it. As the spiritual pearl exploded and dissipated, the flame in Fengjiu's palm also disappeared. As she withdrew her hand, she removed the soundproof barrier in the air. Then, she turned around and walked back. When she passed by Du Fan and the others, she paused and said, "Pack up and prepare in the next few days. We'll find a time to go back." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Then, their eyes overflowed with surprise. "Master, you're going back." Chapter 43-53. Okay, let's go back and prepare. We'll settle everything here and be ready to leave at any time, Du Fan and the others said with a smile. After staying here for so long, they really missed their companions over there. Fengjiu said a few words to them and then went to the main courtyard. When she arrived, she happened to see one adult and two children sitting at the stone table in the courtyard. Seeing her come in, the two children ran over. "Mother, mother, we're waiting for mother to eat." "Okay, let's eat," Fengjiu chuckled and tapped the tips of their noses, then led them to the table. "Is everything settled?" Xianyuan Mose asked. "Yes, it's settled. I think there's nothing here. Why don't we find a time to take the two children back?" She looked at Xianyuan Mose. Xianyuan Mose's eyes fell on the two children and said, "Well, they're so old and haven't gone back to see them. Let's take them back. If you want to come back in the future, or if you want to live somewhere, we'll see when the time comes." Listening to their conversation, the two children couldn't help but ask curiously, "Father, mother, where are we going back? Isn't this our home?" Fengjiu chuckled and said, "Where father and mother are is where our home is. This place can only be regarded as one of our homes. You're so old, but you haven't seen your grandfather and maternal grandfather, so mother will take you back and let them see you." Hearing this, the two children were very excited. "Then when will we go back?" "When the things here are settled," Xianyuan Mo said and looked at Fengjiu. "There's no rush to go back. You just came back, so it's better to rest for 10 days or half a month, so that you won't be tired from running all the way." "Okay, I'll listen to you." Fengjiu smiled. Seeing Qin Axian and Qingqing come in with a few maidservants carrying food, she said to the two children, "Let's go, mother will take you to wash your hands and prepare for dinner. After dinner, we'll take you out to play." When the two children heard this, their eyes couldn't help but light up. Just as they were about to nod, they heard their father's voice. "Not today." Xianyuan Mo spoke unhurriedly. When he saw the two children and Fengjiu looking at him, he coughed lightly and said, "There was thunder just now. It's going to rain today, so it's not suitable to go out." The three of them raised their heads to look at the sky. They saw that the previously cloudy and thundering sky had already dispersed. From the looks of it, it didn't seem like it would rain. "It's not raining now," Yu said in a low voice, while looking at Fengjiu with expectation. Mu Qin said, "I haven't finished my homework today." Looking at the two children, Fengjiu couldn't help but chuckle and say, "All right then. Let's go out today. If we don't finish our homework, we'll do it tomorrow. If it rains, we'll find a place to take shelter. What do you think?" The two children looked at their father at the same time. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mo said helplessly, "You'll spoil them like this. I'm happy today, so it doesn't matter if I spoil them a little, don't you think so?" She winked at the two children. The two children looked at their mother's appearance and couldn't help but smile and nod quickly. "Yes, yes, we'll be very obedient and won't spoil them." Chapter 43-54. That's great. We can go out and play with mother. The two children were so excited that they danced with joy. Seeing the two children so happy, Xianyuan Mo didn't say anything, only saying, "Hurry up and eat. After eating, we'll go out and play." The two hurriedly responded, their faces brimming with happy smiles. Regarding Fengzhou's return, the people in the city didn't know. However, when people saw the family of outstanding appearances strolling through the streets, they couldn't help but be secretly surprised. The red-clothed ghost Dr. Fengzhou wasn't unfamiliar to the people in the city. The only unfamiliar thing was the pair of pink and jade-like children they were holding hands with. Fengzhou and that Yama Lord's outstanding appearances didn't need to be said. However, they didn't expect that the pair of children would also be so good-looking that people couldn't take their eyes off them. The two children had the same appearance, but the little girl in the pink dress looked more lively, while the little boy in the white robe looked like a little adult. His serious appearance almost made the young women on the streets want to go up and hug him. Isn't that the ghost doctor and Yama Lord? It's so rare to see them come out. Speaking of which, it's been almost a year since the ghost doctor appeared in the city. The two children they're holding hands with are their children, right? I've always heard that they have two children, but I rarely see them go out. I didn't expect to see them on the streets today. They're so good-looking. That's right. Yama Lord and the ghost doctor's appearances are so outstanding. It's normal for their children to be good-looking. Hearing the whispers from the people on the streets, Fengzhou looked at the two children with unconcealable pride in her eyes. These were her and Mo's children. They were so good-looking. When they grew up, they would charm a large number of young men and women. At this moment, she couldn't help but think, what kind of man and woman would be worthy of her children in the future? What are you thinking about? Xianyuan Mo saw her lips slightly raised, revealing an inexplicable smile, and could not help but raise his eyebrows and ask. Fengzhou glanced at her and chuckled. I'm thinking, what kind of man and woman will be worthy of our son and daughter in the future? Upon hearing this, Xianyuan Mo glanced at the two children, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. He said, as long as they like it. That's true. As long as they like you, there's nothing to be worthy of. Fengzhou chuckled. She thought that their children's standards would naturally not be low in the future. The person who could catch their eye and fall in love with would naturally be extremely outstanding. They're still young. It's too early to talk about this. Xianyuan Mo said. He didn't want his precious daughter to get married so early. Little doll, come. This tonghulu is for you. An old woman selling tonghulu saw how adorable the two children were and couldn't help but take two tonghulu skewers and offer them to them. The two children looked at the red tonghulu skewers in front of them, then looked up at their parents. Could they take it? Take it if you want to eat it. Fengzhou said with a smile. The two children hurriedly nodded and thanked her sweetly after receiving the tonghulu skewers. Chapter 43-55. Fengzhou saw how happy the two children were as they held the candied haws and instructed Lang Hua to pay before they left. That day, Fengzhou and Xianyuan Mo took them to stroll around the city. When it started to drizzle, they retreated to a restaurant to sit and relax. When the rain stopped and the sky darkened, they finally returned to the residence. Because they were planning to leave this world, Qi Kong and the others took care of the matters here and settled the loose ends. Fengzhou entered the space to cultivate and refine some medicine. Time passed quietly, and half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Knowing that they were going to leave this place and go to another place, the two children had been in a state of excitement. That evening, Fengzhou came out of the space and saw Xianyuan Mo reading on the bed in the room. The two children were nowhere to be seen. Why are you alone? Where are the two children? Fengzhou asked as she walked towards him. When Xianyuan Mo saw her come out, he put down the book in his hand and reached out to pull her over. Feng Jiu turned around and sat on the edge of the bed. At the same time, she leaned into his arms and allowed him to hold her in his big arms. "Ah, Jiu, ever since you came back, if you weren't with the 2 children, you were in the space to cultivate. Have you forgotten that you have a husband like me?" His deep voice was seductive as it sounded in her ear. His warm breath blew into her ear, causing her body to go limp and numb. "Didn't you tell me not to tire myself out and to rest and recuperate?" Feng Jiu said with a smile in her eyes. "Even so, you can't keep neglecting me like this," Xianyuan Mose said unhappily. Hearing this, Feng Jiu chuckled and placed her hands on his large hands around her waist. Her clear eyes were filled with tenderness and a smile as she said tentatively, "Then, let's send the 2 children to sleep in another room tonight. I'll accompany you to spend some quality time together." "Okay." Xianyuan Mose immediately agreed. When Feng Jiu heard this, she was stunned for a moment. She thought that he would at least hesitate. Who knew that he would agree so easily? She couldn't help but find it funny. "Really? Can you be at ease sending the 2 children to sleep in the next room? They're not young anymore. They can sleep on their own." As Xianyuan Mose said this, he tightened his arms around her and rested his chin on her neck. "We can't always let them sleep with us. Then tell them to sleep in their own room tonight." Feng Jiu chuckled. Xianyuan Mose agreed. Smelling the familiar faint fragrance on her body, he lightly kissed her snow-white neck. Moving up, he densely kissed her until their lips touched and their tongues played together. "Father, father." You hadn't arrived yet, but her voice had already spread inside the room. And the moment her voice spread, the door of the room was also pushed open by her, and 2 small figures ran in one after another. After seeing the scene inside the room, their originally excited little faces however stopped, and their expression was somewhat dazed, and also somewhat curious. Chapter 43-56. "Brother, why did Daddy bite Mommy's lips?" You asked Mu Chen curiously. Mu Chen's eyes also blinked. He tilted his head and thought for a while. Finally, he said seriously, "Daddy must be hungry." "Ah. Daddy's hungry. But he can't eat Mommy's lips." "No, I'm going to call Auntie Chin and ask them to prepare some food for Daddy. Daddy's starving." The little one ran out like a gust of wind, shouting as he ran. Feng Jiu, who was in Xianyuan Mose's arms, heard the words of the 2 little ones and couldn't help but feel embarrassed. She glared at Xianyuan Mose and saw her daughter running out. She couldn't help but call out, You. Before she could finish, the little one had already left the room. Auntie Chin, Auntie Chin. Qin Axian, Bai Qingqing, and Hui Lang were all outside the courtyard. When they heard Yu's voice, the 3 of them looked at each other and walked inside. "What's wrong?" Qin Axian squatted down and asked, looking at the anxious Yu in front of her. Auntie Chin, quickly ask the kitchen to prepare some food for Daddy. Daddy's starving, Yu said anxiously, grabbing Qin Axian's hand and asking her to quickly ask the kitchen to prepare food. Hearing this, they were slightly surprised. Qin Axian asked again, "How do you know that your daddy is starving?" "He said he wants to eat." The little one quickly said, "Daddy didn't say, but brother and I saw Daddy biting Mommy's lips. Brother said that Daddy must be starving." Pfft. Hearing this, Hui Lang was stunned and couldn't help but burst out laughing. Qin Axian and Bai Qingqing were also startled, but then their faces overflowed with unconcealable smiles. So that's what happened. They were wondering what happened. In the room, Mu Chen, who was motionless, looked at his mother worriedly and asked, "Mommy, how are you? Do your lips hurt?" He saw that his mother's lips were red and swollen. How can Daddy be like this? No matter how hungry he is, he can't bite Mommy. Fingzhou touched her nose embarrassedly and said, it's nothing. I'm just playing with your daddy." As she spoke, she elbowed him behind her and stood up. She straightened her clothes and coughed lightly. "Why are you here?" "We just practice a set of boxing skills." "Then it's the same for Mother to see." Let's go outside and let Mother see how you're doing." Fengzhou said as she came to his side, took his little hand and walked out. When Xianyuan Mose saw that they had left, he also got up, put on his coat and belt, and followed them out. When they were outside, Xianyuan Mose saw that the people in the courtyard were trying to hold back their laughter. Yu was nestled in Fengzhou's arms, looking at her red and swollen lips worriedly. "Mommy, do you want to apply some medicine? It won't hurt anymore," Yu said and took out a small bottle from her space. She was about to open the wound. Fengzhou hurriedly said, No, Mommy is fine. There's no need to apply medicine." Chapter 43-57. Cough. Xianyuan Mose coughed lightly and looked at Qin Axian and Bai Qingqing. "Prepare 2 rooms for them. From today onwards, each of them will sleep in 1 room." "Ah. Daddy, Yu doesn't want to sleep alone. Yu wants to sleep with Daddy and Mommy." Yu ignored her dissatisfaction and hurriedly hugged his thigh. Mu Qin did not speak and only looked at his parents, as well as his sister who had rushed forward to hug his father's thigh. "You're not young anymore. From today onwards, each of you will live in a room by yourself," Xianyuan Mose said and rubbed her head. "Moreover, we will be leaving in a few days. This is also to let you get used to it in advance." But. Yu thought for a long time but could not think of a good reason to persuade him to let her sleep with them. "It's decided then," Xianyuan Mose said and looked at Mu Qin. "Didn't you say that you've learned a new set of martial arts? Let's see it." "Okay." Mu Qin heard his words and saw his mother looking at him with a smile and encouragement. At that moment, he put away his other thoughts and focused on practicing the martial arts he had learned today in front of him. Looking at the little guy practicing the martial arts methodically, Fengzhou and Xianyuan Mose looked at each other and secretly nodded. Compared to Yu, Chen talent in martial arts seemed to be a level higher. But this was also good. With Chen as her elder brother in the future, they believed that Yu's martial arts would become as good as his. "There's still a courtyard that is empty. Why don't we let the 2 young masters stay there?" Qin Axian suggested at this time and added, "That courtyard is close to here. If Master and Yama Lord are worried and want to take a look, it's just a matter of walking a few steps." Okay. Then let them go to that courtyard," Xianyuan Mose replied. He took a sip of the tea in front of him and glanced at the 2 children standing next to him. The 2 children didn't seem to be very happy, but after they tried to protest, they didn't say anything and just listened to the arrangement. That night, after sending away the 2 kids, Xianyuan Mose finally had a private night with Fengzhou as he wished. In the following nights, Ying Yi was sent out almost every night. A few days later, Qi Kong and the rest returned to the residence after making all the necessary arrangements. Fengzhou and the rest were already prepared to depart at any time. Thus, the next morning, before the sun had even risen, they quietly left the city. They didn't go back the way they came. Instead, after leaving the city, Qi Kong tore open a hole in the sky. The group of them gathered their qi and sat on the flying ship. From the flying ship, They passed through the crack in the sky and headed in the direction of the Phoenix Imperial Court. On this day, the people in this world didn't feel anything wrong. They didn't know that Fengjiu and Xianyuanmos had already left this world. A few days later, in the Phoenix Dynasty. Chapter 43-58. Mother, this place is so beautiful. There are so many peach blossoms. Yu-Er's eyes shined brightly as she looked at the large peach blossom forest in front of her. It was difficult to conceal the excitement in her eyes. Fengjiu faintly smiled and said, "This place is very beautiful. Mother used to frequently come here to live. This time, after rushing back, we will first rest here for a day or two. After that, we will bring you to see your maternal grandfather and the others." "Did you tell them that we arrived at Peach Blossom Cove?" Xianyuanmos asked. Fengjiu looked at him and said, "I was thinking of resting here for a day or two. At that time, we will return to the Feng Manor. For now, there is no need to tell them, so as to avoid them all running over here." Xianyuanmos slightly nodded and said, It should be like this." If the people in the manor knew that they had returned, it was estimated that a large number of people would come over here. "Father, I want to compete with Big Brother to see who can go up the mountain the fastest." Yu-Er pulled on Xianyuanmos' sleeve and said. Her eyes were filled with excitement. Go. Be careful, don't fall." Xianyuanmos nodded and looked at the two children beside him. Following the two children going up, Fengjiu looked at Qin Axayan and Bai Qingcheng and hinted for them to follow. After the two received the signal from Fengjiu, they raised their spirits and chased after the two little masters. Seeing the two children leave first, Xianyuanmos curled his lips and held Fengjiu's hand. While walking up, he chatted with her. "What about Guan Shilin? Did you not send him a message to let him know that we have returned?" Xianyuanmos asked. Fengjiu's footsteps paused and said, "I thought that we wouldn't leave so quickly this time, so I didn't tell him. Let's wait until after we return to the manor." After her voice fell, she continued, "This time, we directly came here. We still haven't gone to your father's place to stay for a few days. So I was thinking that after staying in the manor for a few days, I will bring the two children to see your father." Xianyuanmos walked up the mountain. It was unknown what he was thinking, but he asked, "How is Emo-chan now? Has he still not formed an immortal body?" Fengjiu didn't expect him to ask about Emo-chan. She stopped in her tracks and said, "She hasn't appeared since the last time. However, the aura of the golden lotus in the space is getting stronger and stronger, and she's being nourished by the pure spiritual energy in the space. I think it won't take long for her to condense an immortal body." She paused and looked at him, asking, "Why are you suddenly talking about Emo-chan?" During this time, the Devil Lord has been making a lot of movements. I can see that he is ready to make a move again. If the Black Lotus was not in his hands, it would be easier to deal with him. But with the Black Lotus in his hands, I don't know how much his strength has improved in these 2 years. The longer we delay, the harder it will be to deal with him in the future. So I was thinking that after returning this time, we will have to deal with the Devil Lord and take back or destroy the Black Lotus. Xianyuanmos slowly explained his plan. Now, if there was anything in this world that he was afraid of, it should be the fact that the Black Lotus of Destruction had fallen into the hands of the Devil Lord. He had experienced it personally and naturally knew how dark and powerful the Black Lotus was. Especially now that they had a pair of children, he was even more worried about when things would explode out of control. Chapter 43-59. They were tired from running all the way, so they chose to have a good rest in this peach blossom cove for 2 days before going home. In their opinion, there was no need to be anxious. This was the first time the two children had seen such a beautiful place. The whole peach blossom forest was so real in front of their eyes. Looking at the scene of petals flying in the wind, couldn't help but pull Chin Axayan beside her and asked, "Aunt Chin, will this peach blossom tree bear peaches?" "Yes." Chin Axayan smiled, "but now is the time when the peach blossom is in full bloom. It will only bear peaches after the flowering period." "Wow, then won't there be big peaches hanging on this tree in the future?" Wants to pick them personally. Her little face was filled with excitement and anticipation. At that moment, she smiled and ran forward, shouting, big brother, come and chase me. Come and chase me." At this time, somewhere in this peach blossom forest, Xian Yuanhao, who was wearing a fitting blue robe, was sitting between the branches of a peach tree. He looked at this familiar peach blossom forest and thought of his father and mother in his heart. Since he was brought back by his biological father, he hadn't seen his father and mother for several years. He didn't know how they were now. Did they miss him? Although he had returned to the side of his biological parents, but in his heart, he always remembered that pair of parents who were strict and loved him dearly. Even if they were not his biological parents, but in his heart, their position was far higher than his biological parents. Because he missed his mother, every year when the peach blossom was in full bloom, he would quietly come here to stay for a few days and then go back. This peach blossom cove was his mother's place, but the peach blossom was in full bloom every year, but he couldn't see his mother every year. Brother, come and chase me, come and chase me." Not far away, the sound of laughter pulled back his thoughts. He looked at the direction of the sound and saw a chubby little girl wearing a pink dress running in the peach blossom forest with a pair of short little legs. From time to time, she would turn her head back and waved her hand while shouting. About 10 meters behind the little girl, a little boy in a white robe was walking at a leisurely pace. The little boy had the exact same face as the little girl, which made him feel surprised. Brother, come quickly." Was running, and seeing that she was about to be tripped by a branch on the ground, who was sitting on the top of the branch immediately jumped down and caught her. "Sister!" Mu Qin shouted as he ran forward. Chin Axayan and Bai Qingqing, who were following behind, were slightly surprised. Looking at the familiar figure, they couldn't help but look at each other. "How are you? Are you hurt?" However, hugged the little meatball that had fallen on his body. He realized that when he hugged her like this little person's body was soft and meaty. It was very comfortable. Blinked her beautiful eyes, then looking at this handsome and unfamiliar little brother before her eyes, she stood up, then politely thanked him. Thanks little brother, didn't hurt," she said with a beaming smile. Then standing up, she patted the leaves stuck on her body. "Sister." Mu Qin came to her side and shielded her behind him. He looked at this boy who was much taller than them. Chapter 4360. Thank you for helping my sister. I'm her brother. Mu Chen's childish voice came out of his mouth, and he bowed respectfully to the person in front of him as a form of thanks. However, after bowing, he asked again, "This is the inner courtyard, a private place. How did you get in?" He had been playing with Aunt Chin and the rest in this peach blossom cove. Along the way, he had told them about the difference between the inner courtyard and the inner courtyard. Naturally, he knew that this was the inner courtyard, and outsiders were not allowed to enter. The expression on his little face was serious, unlike that of an average 2- or 3-year-old child. Especially his soft voice, it was not threatening at all, but it made people want to laugh. How couldn't help but curl his lips when he saw the two identical little people in front of him. A trace of a smile flashed across his eyes. These two little guys were so small, so short, and two identical little faces. One had a straight face, looking like a little adult, while the other had a pair of curious and beautiful eyes, quick-witted and sly. He couldn't help but want to pinch those pink and tender little cheeks. Yes, back then, his mother liked to pinch his face. "Who are you? Why did you come in? You can't come in here, quickly get out," Mu-chin said, his gaze fixed on him. Hao-er returned to his senses and looked at the little guy in front of him. He asked, "Since you know that this is the inner courtyard and you can't come in to play, why did you come in?" "Little brother, this is my mother's place. So you and brother can come in to play." You poked her head out from behind Mu-chin and smiled sweetly at him. Hao-er was startled. "This is my mother's place, how can it be your mother's place?" "It's true, you isn't lying. This is Mother's Peach Blossom Cove. She brought us here," Yu said softly. Afraid that he wouldn't believe her, she quickly turned around and called out, Aunt Chin, quickly come here. Quickly tell little brother that this is Mother's place. You isn't lying." Chin Axan, who was behind the peach tree, came out at this time. She smiled and looked at Hao-er. After seeing Hao-er, she asked Ching to inform her master and the others because no one expected Hao-er to be here. She was originally thinking of hiding at one side to see what would happen when these three children met, but who would have thought that Yu-er would call her out? "Aunt Chin." Hao-er's eyes widened when he saw the familiar face. "Hao-er," Chin Axian called out with a smile. Mu-chin looked at Hao-er and then at Chin Axian. "Aunt Chin, do you know him?" Chin Axian smiled and said, "Yes." "Who is he?" Mu-chin asked. As intelligent as Xianyuan Hao was, he looked at the two identical little fellows and then looked at the familiar Chin beside them. A thought flashed in his mind and his gaze fell on the two little fellows again. He looked at their exquisite and outstanding faces and vaguely guessed their identities. "Aunt Chin, are they father and mother's children?" Hao-er asked. This time, it was Mu-chin and Yu-er's turn to be confused. Chapter 43-61. When the two little fellows heard this, they couldn't help but widen their beautiful eyes. They looked at the person in front of them who was several years older than them with astonishment. This time, Hao-er looked at the two little fellows in front of him seriously. The more he looked, the more he felt that they resembled his mother. At this moment, he caught a glimpse of a red figure coming over from the corner of his eye. When he looked up, that familiar face was reflected in his eyes. Surprise overflowed on that cold little face. "Mother!" Hao-er quickly ran toward that familiar figure and threw himself into her arms. Smelling the familiar scent on her body, his eyes couldn't help but redden. Mother, Hao-er missed Mother so much," he said in a choked voice. His hands clutched her dress tightly as if he was afraid that she would disappear again. Hao-er. Fengjiu was overjoyed to see him. This child whom she had raised single-handedly was already so big. "Come, let Mother see how much taller Hao has grown." She chuckled and stroked his head, carefully sizing him up. Hao-er stood up straight and looked at her with reddened eyes. While she was sizing him up, he was also looking at her. He saw that his mother hadn't changed. She was still the mother he was familiar with. She was still the mother who would look at him with a doting expression. Hao-er has grown a lot taller and more handsome. Fengjiu chuckled and pinched his little face with a doting expression. Hao has always listened to mother and worked hard to cultivate, he said. Yes, mother knows. Seeing Hao's current strength and cultivation, mother knows that Hao has been working hard to cultivate. Fengjiu looked at his thin little face and asked sympathetically, but why is Hao so thin? Did you only focus on cultivating and didn't eat? I did eat, he said. However, because he cultivated so much every day, he didn't gain much weight. Who accompanied you here? How long have you been here? Why didn't you go home? Fengjiu asked. He looked around and didn't find anyone else accompanying him. Father sent someone to accompany me, but I don't like him following me, so I didn't let him guard here. I've already been here for 2 days. Every year, I'll come here to stay for a few days before going back. But I didn't expect to meet mother this year. Mother, I want to live with mother. I don't want to go back to father's place. He hugged her arm and spoke the words in his heart. He wanted to stay by his mother's side and didn't want to go back there. Although his parents also treated him very well, he always felt that they did not treat him as well as they did. Especially after his parents had a younger brother, it was even more obvious. Mu Chen and Yu, who had been watching from the side for a long time, looked at each other. At this time, they stepped forward and came to their mother's side. Mother. The 2 little guys looked at the person who claimed to be their elder brother with hostility in their eyes. Was this little brother here to snatch mother away from them? Fengjiu looked at the 3 little guys beside her and chuckled. Come, mother will introduce you. Chen Yu this is your brother Hao. Quick, call him brother. Chapter 4362. Mu Chen also pursed his lips and refused to call him that. Because in his opinion, this person who suddenly came here was not their brother. Now that they had to call him brother, he was unhappy. Moreover, this person called their mother mother. It was obvious that he was here to snatch their mother from them. This made him feel a strong sense of danger, so he stared at him warily like a little hedgehog. Fengjiu was stunned. She thought that the children would be very happy to see each other, but she did not expect Mu Qin and Mu Yu to feel so repulsed by Hao. For a moment, she was a little surprised and did not understand what was going on. Hao was already sensible. He knew that he was not his parents' biological child. Now that his parents had a biological child, would they still treat him as before? For a moment, his little face was a little pale. He stood there with his lips pursed and did not speak. The cold aura on his body became stronger. Fengjiu squatted down beside the 3 children and looked at them. She said, "The 3 of you are all my treasures. You are all my favorite children, so you must get along well. You can't be like this, understand? But little brother will snatch mother away," Yu whispered. Looking at her little brother's red eyes, she felt that she had done something wrong. She felt a little guilty. Hearing this, Fengjiu was stunned. Then, she chuckled. She turned back and asked Qin Xan and the others to prepare some food that the children liked to eat. Then, she led them to sit under the peach blossom tree. Mother is your mother. No one can take her away from you. In the past, when you 2 were young, mother wasn't by your side, so I didn't tell you about how, I guess your father didn't mention it to you either, right? Why don't I tell you why Hao calls me mother? When the 2 little guys heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other, then at Hao beside them. Only then did they nod. Okay. Thus, the 3 children sat under the peach blossom tree and listened to Fengjiu talk about things that they did not know back then in detail. When Xianyuan Mose came looking for them, he saw the 3 of them sitting under the peach blossom tree. The peach blossom and the people under the tree set off each other. The scene was extremely beautiful. He slowly walked forward and listened to their whispers. He listened to the two little ones' cries of surprise until they stood up when they saw him. "Father!" Yu happily rushed forward and said, "Father, we are listening to Mother talk about Big Brother How's childhood." "Father!" Muchin also called out, but he did not step forward. How greets father. Seeing him, How smiled and bowed respectfully. "Yes, I heard that How was here, so I came over to take a look. Your mother originally wanted to send you a message when she got home, but she didn't expect you to be here." Xianyuan Mose said as he carried Yu and walked forward. Looking at the three children, he said, "It seems that you all already know each other." "We know each other." Muchin said as he looked at Hao and said, "From now on, he will be yours and my big brother." Although he was young and not very sensible, after hearing those things from his mother, he gradually recognized him in his heart. Even if he was not their father and mother's biological son, in the future, they would still call him Big Brother. Chapter 43-63. Hearing this, the two children looked at each other and nodded. Yes, we understand. Qin Axian and the others have already prepared the children's favorite food in front. Let's go together. Xianyuan Mose looked at Fengjiu and said. Then, he reached out to Hao let's go. Yes. Hao looked at the big hand reaching out to him and reached out to take it. Feeling his father's big hand holding his small hand tightly, he couldn't help but look up at him with a happy smile in his eyes. "Father, I don't want to go back. I want to be with you, is that okay?" Hao asked as he walked with him. Fengjiu held the two children's hands and followed behind while listening to the two people in front of them talk. "Why don't you want to go back? Don't your father and the others treat you well?" Xianyuan Mose asked and lowered his head to look at him. Hao shook his head and said, "No, they treat me very well. They never treat me badly when it comes to food and things." "Since that's the case, why don't you want to go back?" Xianyuan Mose asked again. I want to be with father, mother, and brother and sister," he said in a small voice and lowered his head slightly. Fengjiu saw this and said with a smile, "This matter isn't urgent. Let's talk about it later. But now that we're back here and you're here, then come back home with us tomorrow and stay for a few days. I'll send someone to inform your father." Hearing this, he was happy and a smile appeared on his cold face. "Thank you, mother." He looked at the two identical siblings beside his mother and said, "I'll take care of them." Fengjiu couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. "You're still a child yourself. How can you take care of these two little devils? You just met them and don't know. Once you get familiar with them, you'll know that these two little fellows are extremely naughty, especially you, Fengjiu glanced at her daughter beside her and saw that the little one was smiling with an innocent and harmless face. She couldn't help but secretly shake her head. This was really weird. The family went to the pavilion in front and ate while admiring the peach blossoms. Fengjiu saw that the three children had gradually integrated from the initial rejection of strangers. Fengjiu smiled and said to Xianyuan Mose, "Stay with them for a while. I'll be back soon." Xianyuan Mose replied, then glanced at her. His gaze once again fell upon the three children playing in the peach blossom forest. Fengjiu got up and left. At the same time, she indicated for Du Fan to follow her. When they reached a place where there was no one, she stopped and said to Du Fan, "Go to the Black Tortoise Monarch's side personally and tell him that Mose and I have returned. We haven't seen Hao for a long time and missed him." Just happened to be at the Peach Blossom Cove, so let him stay with us for a while. Okay. Du Fan responded and didn't leave. Instead, he looked at her. He believed that Master still had things to tell him. Fengjiu paused and said, "When you go over, find out how Hao has been with his father these past few years. Remember, don't alarm them. Just quietly ask around. I want to hear the truest news." Chapter 43-64. Alright, I know what to do. Du Fan replied before turning to leave. Fengjiu walked forward and watched the three children chase and play in the peach blossom forest. Waves of laughter spread through the peach blossoms. She could not help but slightly raise the corners of her lips, revealing a smile. If the future could continue to be this beautiful and happy, that would be great. The next day, the Feng Manor began to get busy early in the morning. Everyone's faces were filled with smiles of joy and anticipation. There was no other reason other than that they had received news from Fengjiu that they would be returning home today. Quickly, quickly. Clean that place up. See if there's anything missing from the yard. Quickly prepare it. Has the kitchen maid gone to buy groceries? Call a few people to go with her and buy some more groceries. Because Feng Sanyuan knew that Fengjiu and the others were returning, he was so excited that he could not stop smiling. He ordered the manor's servants to begin preparing. Arrange some flowers in the vase in the room. Go to the garden and pick some. How can these things be placed here? No, it has to be like this. As Feng Sanyuan spoke, he saw that the servants were not doing things to his liking, so he wanted to do it himself. However, he was stopped by Feng Xiao, who had rushed over. Father, just go sit in the front for a while. They know what to do. Also, we will be watching. Feng Xiao helplessly said as he pulled him outside. What are you doing? I need to give them some orders. Feng Sanyuan said as he patted his hand, indicating for him to stop. Father, I'll take care of this place. Shengwan Wanrong walked over and gently said with a smile, Xiao Zhou's yard has always been cleaned. The things in the room have not been touched. They can directly move in when they return. They haven't been back for many years, and no one has lived here for many years. It lacks a bit of human activity. That's why. Have the maidservants go to the garden and arrange some flowers in the room. Feng girl will like them. Feng Sanyuan ordered. Alright, I know. Wanrong replied with a smile and said, Father, go sit in the front yard for a while. Maybe Xiao Jiu and the others will be here soon. Hearing this, Feng Sanyuan slapped his head, that's right. It's getting late. Maybe they'll be here soon. Alright, I'll leave the rest to you guys. Tell the kitchen to make more of Feng's favorite dishes, as well as some pastries that children like. Alright, I will explain it to you. She responded with a smile and watched him rush forward. Only then did she say to Feng Xiao, you also go to the front. I'll take care of the rest. Alright, I'll go to the front to accompany Dad. He's been so excited since last night when he found out that Xiao Jiu and the others are coming back today, Feng Xiao said with a smile and patted her hand before walking forward. Although the Phoenix dynasty was still called the Phoenix dynasty, it was the only country that did not have a monarch. It was formed by the various family forces, and the Feng family was the leader of the various family forces. The people of the nearby countries did not dare to make a move against this unremarkable little country. Instead, they tried to befriend them. Thus, over the years, the people of the Phoenix dynasty lived better and better lives. Although no one said it, they all remembered the good of the Fong family. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.